Bum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-da-dum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum.
Welcome to Everyday Musicality, the podcast in which we discuss all things related to Gordon's music learning theory and how it can help unlock the inner musician that lives inside of all of us. I'm your host, Heather Shouldice, music educator and faculty member for the Gordon Institute for Music Learning. In this episode, we'll focus on the differences between formal instruction and informal guidance. Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Musicality podcast. Whether you're new to the show or you've listened before, I'm glad you're here. I'm also excited because I have an announcement about our current giveaway from sponsor GIA Publications, which I will tell you about at the end of the episode. Today, I'm kicking off a short series of episodes centered around preparing students for formal music learning. Back in episode 9, I gave an overview of Gordon's skill learning sequence. As I discussed in that episode, the skill learning sequence is a theoretical framework that provides insight on the music learning process and suggests possible pathways we might take in guiding students' music learning in a sequential way. If you're not familiar with the skill learning sequence, you might want to go back and listen to episode 9. Now, one very important thing to remember about the musical skills encompassed in that skill learning sequence is that students do not all come to us with the readiness to be immediately successful in learning those skills. This is because the skill learning sequence pertains to formal music learning, which happens through formal instruction. So, what is formal instruction? What do I mean when I say formal instruction? Basically, in formal instruction, students are expected to learn certain skills and information through experiences designed by the teacher to accomplish particular instructional goals. This means that the teacher goes into the experience of formal instruction with a plan for what is to be learned or achieved, and a certain level of expectation for what they would consider to be success on the part of the student. So again, the defining characteristics of formal instruction are: the teacher has one or more specific instructional goals, they make a plan for how they will teach the skills and content, and the teacher expects that the students will learn the skills and content and develop a certain level of mastery or a certain level of correctness. Now, that level of mastery may differ from student to student. For example, we might differentiate the difficulty level of the material for each individual, often based on their unique music aptitudes. But all students are learning the same general skill and content regardless of the difficulty level of their specific prompt. But the overall point of formal instruction is that each student learns the intended skill and content with a certain level of success, a certain level of mastery. But we are not born ready for formal instruction in music. Maybe you've experienced this firsthand. Maybe you learned about MLT and went back to your classroom chomping at the bit to start teaching skills at the oral skill level, only to find that your students seriously struggled. Rest assured, there's nothing wrong with you or your students. It's probably that they simply weren't ready for formal instruction yet. Remember, the skill learning sequence is a framework for formal music learning. In order for students to be successful with formal instruction, it is crucial that they have had sufficient informal music learning experiences first. For students to benefit fully from formal instruction, they must first have ample opportunities to experience and begin learning music through informal guidance, in which children are exposed to music and encouraged to absorb and respond to it, but they're not required to do so in specific ways or with an expected level of correctness. Now, this is because formal music instruction is most productive when students are already audiating. Just as we do not come out of the womb thinking in language, we are not born audiating music. Before we develop audiation, we're in a phase that Gordon referred to as preparatory audiation, or music babble. We experience preparatory audiation both tonally and rhythmically. During tonal preparatory audiation, or tonal babble, young children begin to absorb and respond to musical pitch, begin to develop a sense of tonal center, and discover and experiment with their singing voices. During rhythm preparatory audiation, or rhythm babble, young children begin to absorb and respond to rhythm, begin to develop a sense of beat, and experiment with moving and chanting rhythmically. In order for us to move through these preparatory audiation phases, we must be immersed in a rich environment of musical sounds in which others are interacting with us in order to learn to make sense of music. Furthermore, one's progression from preparatory audiation to audiation is not dependent on chronological age. Regardless of how old a person is, if they haven't had sufficient opportunities to explore and respond to musical sounds, to engage in musical play, and to begin to develop a sense of tonal center and beat, they will not truly be ready for formal instruction in music. Therefore, students should first be given ample opportunities to experience and begin learning music through informal guidance. During informal music guidance, the child is exposed to music and encouraged to absorb and respond to it, but they aren't required to respond in specific ways. Primarily, there is no requirement or expectation for children to demonstrate a correct musical response when engaged in informal music guidance. Instead, the teacher provides a rich musical environment that allows children the freedom to experiment and play with musical sounds in a developmentally appropriate way. Doing so provides the necessary readiness for formal instruction. So, informal guidance differs from formal instruction in several important ways. Remember that in formal instruction, there is an objective, a goal predetermined by the teacher to be accomplished through engaging in the particular learning activity. And it is expected that students will demonstrate mastery of the intended skill with a certain level of accuracy. In informal guidance, however, there is no expectation for students to demonstrate a particular response or give a correct answer. This is because the goal of informal music guidance is simply to provide a rich musical environment in which children can explore and experiment with musical sounds in a developmentally appropriate way, and this will provide readiness for formal instruction. Another important difference between formal instruction and informal guidance is that formal instruction is only appropriate once the majority of students are audiating. Before that point, children need rich interactions with music through informal guidance that will help move them from preparatory audiation, or music babble, to audiation. Finally, even after the majority of your students are audiating and you decide to begin formal instruction, you should continue providing informal guidance experiences for the benefit of those students who are still in preparatory audiation. Furthermore, once you have begun formal instruction with the skill learning sequence with content in more familiar tonalities and meters like major, minor, duple, triple, it's important to continue providing informal guidance in less familiar tonalities and meters so that students will have the readiness to begin formal instruction with that content in the future. Informal guidance should never stop. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Informal guidance should always be happening. We should always be exposing our students to music in an informal way as a way to prepare them to learn formally in the future. Once a child has a sense of tonal and rhythm syntax and can coordinate their singing and chanting with their breathing and their movement, they can be considered to have moved from preparatory audiation into audiation and are ready for formal instruction. The amount of time needed to progress through each stage of tonal preparatory audiation and rhythm preparatory audiation will vary depending on the child, in accordance with their previous musical experiences, as well as their music aptitude. With ample exposure and appropriate guidance, all children can progress through preparatory audiation into audiation. Unfortunately, it is also possible for a person to grow into adulthood without transitioning out of music babble, and this will hinder their ability to engage in and benefit from formal music instruction. Thus, before attempting to teach students music through formal instruction, it is crucial that we give them opportunities to be immersed in a rich musical environment in which they can experience extensive informal music guidance. Now, ideally, each child would engage in years of informal music guidance in their home and their community before entering public school. However, because many parents may not prioritize music at home or may believe they themselves lack musical ability, many children have not had a sufficient amount of prior informal guidance in music before they enter school. Thus, we as the music teacher need to provide that informal guidance experience to ensure that our students are ready for formal instruction in music, to ensure that our students are really ready to master the skills and the content that we wish them to master. So, those are the basic differences between formal instruction and informal guidance in music. There's a lot more to informal guidance and preparatory ideation, which is what we'll tackle in the next few episodes. First, we'll look more closely at Gordon's theory of preparatory ideation, and then we'll look at ways that we as music teachers can provide informal guidance experiences in our music classes to help our students move from preparatory ideation to ideation and prepare them to be successful with formal music learning. Before I end today's episode, don't forget that our current giveaway from GIA is a copy of Music Play. Also, GIA just provided me with a free copy of Music Play 2 hot off the presses. So, I'm sweetening the giveaway. I'll be giving away both Music Play and Music Play 2, and you can enter to win both. As I mentioned in the last episode, if you want to enter to win a copy of Music Play, simply post a photo, image, or graphic on social media with the text, "I am a music teacher because," or "music is important because," and fill in the blank. You can do that on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Just be sure to add the hashtags Everyday Musicality Podcast and GIA Publications, and either set the post privacy to public so I can see it when I search, or tag the Everyday Musicality Podcast page on Facebook, or email me a screenshot of your post. Now that's for the first Music Play. If you also want to enter to win a copy of Music Play 2, you can head on over to your podcast app of choice, rate and review the show, and email a screen cap of your review to everydaymusicality@gmail.com, or you can post it to the Everyday Musicality Podcast page on Facebook. In the meantime, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, please get in touch. You can email me or send me a voice memo at everydaymusicality@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and let's keep musicking every day.